Welcome to About Freedom Show.
I'm excited to be here.
Okay, Heather, I'm going to ask you right away about simulation, about what you do. What do you mean by this game is a simulation? You mean we live in a simulation?
Okay, great. I'm excited you asked me this. so, in 2016, I wrote a book called The Game, Nothing is as It Seems. And in that story, Earth is a virtual reality. You're born into the program. Your body is your avatar and your biocomputer. And the feelings of love and fear run the binary code of the program. Okay? Does that make sense so far?
Not yet, but we'll see.
Not
Okay.
yet? Okay. so, so you have to kind of think like a computer. So a computer has a binary code, right? It runs on ones and zeros. Well, no, but I mean, a lot of people don't know that everything that you see on the computer are just ones and zeros. It's called the binary code. And so you learn something new, right? So the idea of this story was that your body is basically your computer. It's your biocomputer, and it's running the program. So what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, imagine it as a program, and it's running because of the feelings that you have of love or fear. Right? So you might go, so from a feeling point of view, it might go love, 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 fear, 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 love, fear, love, fear. Whatever that is, those feelings, you're going to see those mirrored back to you. And so to get a better idea of this, think of it like a dream. So when you dream, let's say you go to your therapist and you say, okay, I've been dreaming about a snake every day this week and I don't know what's going on. And your therapist would say, they wouldn't go, well, what color was it? Was it, poisonous or not? Was it indoors or outdoors? They go, how did you feel about that? Does that make sense? Okay, so your feelings, we're positively, with no question about it, your feelings are creating your dreamscape. Now notice, when you fall asleep, you don't think what you're going to dream, but I guarantee you that whatever you're dreaming is going to be exactly in alignment with how you feel. And that's why if someone has PTSD, they're going to have nightmares and that kind of thing. And other people, if they're calm during the day, generally they're going to have pretty calm, maybe exciting, but not like violent. It's not random is my point, right? What you're dreaming is going to be very specific to what you feel. And you could even think of it as your subconscious imagination, right? Because it's not the left brain. Your analysis isn't creating your dreams. It's your right brain.
So you said that we live in a computer program.
It's not a computer program, and I'm going to explain that to you.
Okay, so because we can program ourselves with affirmations, with a positive thinking, feeling happy, or vice versa, with feeling depressed and complaining, we program
Right.
ourselves as well.
Oh,
So,
yes, 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 yes. I see what you mean. You're right. When you said a computer program, I got it. And you're absolutely right. What I was thinking of is sometimes when people think of simulation theory, they believe that there is this computer that runs the entire show, right? It's like this big computer from the future or wherever. But I just wanted to, but yes, you're correct. It is your body, your biocomputer, your feelings that are running the show, and it's very specific to you. And not to get ahead of myself here, but there's something called many interacting worlds, MIW. And the idea with that is that you have your own little bubble and other people have their little bubble. So like you and I, if we were together in person, our bubbles like come together and then we go away. And so it's that kind of a concept. But the really important part of understanding this is that this is I'm going to get to this, but basically this is your dream. So when you're in your dream, it's just you, right? It doesn't matter what's going on with other people. And everything that you experience is created by how you feel. 100%. I
interesting.
know you're
Okay.
thinking about this.
I'm trying to I'm trying to digest all this, but let's see. So again, going back to the simulation you said. So you said we live in a
Okay.
simulation. So
Yeah.
can you explain this simulation theory?
All right. So back when I published the book, The Game, 3 months later, Elon Musk was in a thing called Code Conference, and he said that the odds, now this is how he said it, I'll explain it, but he said the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions. So the way that scientists and people who theorize about this is that that base reality, according to the way they see it, is a physical world of like what we think this is, right? Um, and so he says it's 1 in billions. Like he's like, there's no way that this is a real physical reality. And so there's another way to look at this. So you could see simulation theory as some external group. We're in this gigantic simulation. But I came up with a different way of seeing this. And I'll tell you why that happened. I had a dream one time where I instantly woke up in the dream and I knew I was dreaming. So I was like two places at once. And in the dream, I was in a little house and there was a table. And I go up to the table knowing for a fact the table is not there. And I knock on the table and it is solid. I can feel the grain in it. I look underneath the table because I know I can't really imagine exactly what the table. It was perfect. The echo in the room, all of it was perfect. So when I woke up, I realized you cannot tell the difference between your sleeping dream and your waking world. They are exactly the same in terms of how they respond, right? And if you had been in that dream with me, I could not have convinced you that it wasn't real.
Yeah, that's what near-death experiencers say, that that world, it was more real for them than this world. Basically,
Yep.
what you're saying too. Yeah.
Yeah. So this got me thinking, and I have to tell you, this took me a long time. In fact, this experience is what gave me the idea to create Earth as a virtual reality and the whole, premise behind the book. Um, but I kept thinking about it. And so in the process of writing the book, I use quantum physics. It's a fictional story with a couple of teenagers and, they get lost in the desert and all kinds of, adventure and mayhem and fun stuff. But as in essence, I was just working with the ideas. And the more I wrote it, the more I became convinced that this is absolutely, well, I called it a virtual reality, but here's the difference. A virtual reality is sort of like, when kids play virtual reality, they're wearing like goggles and you're playing a game. But a simulation, the idea there is that you don't know you're in it, right? So you have no idea. And so basically, I was actually writing about a simulation. I just didn't know the word at the time. But there's just so many things that back this idea up that this isn't real. So I'm gonna just start with that for a second, and I want to just share something with you. I saved a little quote I wanted to read. Um, so in this book, let me just give you this one little part. There's a character, and his name's Matthew. He's in high school, and he and his friend Amelia have both died for the moment. And they're on the other side talking to a little girl named Asha, and she tells them, no, this is all a virtual reality. And he says to her, he's a science guy, and he goes, well, the idea that this is a virtual reality game is a little too perfect. It explains away every conceivable anomaly because anything and everything is possible. And the little girl nods and she goes, well, that's how the truth works. In your world, every scientific theory gives way to new theories. Theories you believe today will all change in time. Truth is simple and unchanging. Anything that explains away every conceivable anomaly is the nature of truth. So I didn't think that up, man. That just came in when I was writing it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds pretty darn good. So think about it. Look at all the scientific stuff, and then they're like, oh well, if something doesn't fall into the science, then it's a miracle, or it's a there's something there's some we don't know why it just happened, but what if there are no anomalies in truth? Like if it's real, everything would work. So let me tell you something else. Einstein said, matter is energy whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Mm-hmm. So what we're talking about is you're saying, like if you think about it, people go, well, I don't believe this. But we know that the whole universe is energy, according to quantum physics, right? I don't know if you've heard of that before, but that's what they say. And so what Einstein is saying is that the energy slows down until you have an experience of it being solid. But think about this. Everything is pure imagination, right? I mean, and I know it doesn't sound logical right now, but no matter what's going on, you imagine it first. If you get sick and you start getting a sore throat, I guarantee you're either going to imagine, oh my gosh, it's going to get worse, and then this and that, and I've got to blah, blah, blah. Or you're going to go, okay, I'm going to take my garlic, I'm going to do this and that, and I'll be fine by tomorrow. And whatever you imagine is what you are going to experience.
So, analogy with what Einstein said. So, you think that we had to lower our vibrations in order to incarnate on this earth?
No, no. It's because you come into play. Well, I mean, do you lower your vibration? Everything around you, I mean, oh, that's such a good question, Sergey. I would say that you're constantly in the process. I mean, you certainly could, and you probably do have to lower your vibration, but I don't think you have to do it yourself. I think it's part of the process of coming in to play the game.
All
So,
right.
but which
Let me
brings me
let,
to another level.
let me let me continue my question. So,
Okay.
let's say Jesus or other
Mm-hmm.
masters that incarnated on this earth to deliver a message for people, they had to lower their vibration so much so we can hear them, so we can understand them,
Right.
so they can incarnate here and be visible to us.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know
Right.
if I made myself clear.
Well,
It probably
no, you
is
did great. And
okay.
actually, it's a great question. I just don't really, from this context, I don't really know the exact answer to that. I mean, absolutely, you're going to lower your vibration because you're coming into a human body. You're in an avatar. Let's put it that way, right? But let me step back just a moment and give you an idea, like where's this game coming from, and what's it about?
Okay.
So first of all, let's in quantum physics they say that we live in a world of pure energy, but they don't tell you what that energy is. Now, I believe that energy is love, like love, the creator love, like God is love, right? and and that everything is love. That's all, that's everything we've got going on. And so when I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about this in terms of being a game, or as they call it, a simulation, but let's call it a game because I love working with the idea that it's a game. And also, if you think about it, for people who are gamers, though you won't relate to this, your son probably will, but like right now, people are playing virtual reality, right? And it's a big deal. But the ultimate game, anybody would tell you, would be to be in a simulation, because there's nothing more challenging than not knowing that you're playing a game. So then I've started to think about a game, and this is what got me wondering. So I believe so I want to tell you one thing. Whether I use the word God, it doesn't matter. I love the sound that goes with God, because it goes along with God, Jehovah, Buddha, it doesn't matter, these ah sounds. So I use it all the time, but anybody can interpret this anyway. It doesn't matter what you call it. But for me, I like to call it God's game. And I started thinking about this and I thought, well, here's the interesting thing about God. So in my world, God is all, all intelligence, all mind, all soul, all spirit, all love. And the one thing that hit me that God cannot experience in this God state is God can't have an experience. Because if you are pure intelligence and you know everything, and imagine creating a game, like in a game, they they programmed the game. So imagine God's created this game that is it's got every possibility in it. Like every possibility already exists because it's God's game, right? And so if you come from that point of view, then how does God get to play the game? And so this is just how it unfolded to me. And it doesn't have to make sense because in the end, I'm going to show you a way to look at this so that it works, so you can understand how to play the game in a way that's powerful and right. Okay. So the idea is that what if God created this entire fantastic game, and the only way that God could play the game is if part of God falls asleep. And so now you're in this dream state. Now think about it. We dream and we can talk about dreams. A lot of people, like there could be people who have no idea what a dream is, but we can use this as a way to understand it. Like, isn't it amazing that in this reality, we have dreaming. So as I explain this, you can understand it differently. So imagine part of God falls asleep. And then, so there's God as the dreamer. And as I'm doing this in my mind, I'm like, well, wait, and then the one who's having the experience is the one being dreamed. So when you have a dream, you're sleeping, your body's completely calm and like quiet. And then there's all this, experiential stuff going on in the dream. But now get this. So when I first thought about this, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be dreamed up. That's really boring. And then I went, but wait a minute. If God is the dreamer, and you're the one being dreamed, and you are, we all are because we're all the ones having the experience, then who are you? And if you've ever heard people talk about God and I are one, or we're all one, that there is no separation, well, that takes care of the idea that there's any separation. There is no separation between you, the dreamer, and the dream that you're having, but the dream you're having isn't real. And no matter how bad it is or what happens, you are going to wake up. Okay? And so nothing really bad can happen, right? Because you're going to wake up and go, oh my God, it was a dream. And look at all the NDE people you talk to. Isn't that exactly what they say? They like wake up out of this and it's a completely different experience. And they talk about, when they're on this side, how it seems heavy. And then on the other side, it's really light, it's really quick, and it's instant. Everything's like, boom, right? And so, okay. So my thought was, well, what if God created all of this so that God could have experiences? Because you see, if you're pure love, you never get to experience compassion, kindness. You don't know what an aha moment is. You can't have a challenge. There's nothing that challenges you. Okay? So now let's go to people. So, okay, let's step back one more second. So this is what they said in what Elon Musk said in about simulation theory. The odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions. So he's saying that base reality is a physical world. Okay? Now, I'm going to take the same concept. What I believe is base reality is what you would call the other side, or the spirit world. We go, that's where we're born into this dream that we're dreaming. And when we die, we go back there. So that would be what's called base reality. So it's this place that's love, it's instant manifestation, right? But think about this. We are all eternal beings. And of course, you know that because of all the people you talk to who, even if they didn't think they were eternal, like, oh my gosh, I didn't die. I thought I was going to die, but I didn't. Right? So we're all eternal beings. So think about this. You look at how people describe the world that they're in when they pass over. When it's, and most people have a good experience, some people don't, but for the people that have good experiences, it's like, they love it. They're happy. I've never heard an NDE go, I just could not wait to come back to Earth. I couldn't wait. And they're all going, no, don't make me go back. I don't want to go back, right? So we know that there's this very special world that we have come from. And so when people, and many people who have had the near-death experience, they tell you that the whole thing about being here on planet Earth is about love. They're like, change your game, basically. Play it from a place of love, right? Okay, so when you decide that you want to, so this is why I got it that people would want to come here, because when we're here, we're like, oh my gosh, it's so much work. It's so hard to be here. So why do we come? So, right? Right? So imagine that you live in this perfect world and you're eternal. So everything in your world is perfect all the time. Everybody loves each other. If you eat food, it's organic. You can have whatever you want. You imagine anything. You can do anything, be anything, go wherever you want. How long, given eternity, would it take for you to get bored? What do you think? If you had eternity, how long would it take for you to get bored and go, okay, I've already been doing this for 2 billion years of feeling really good. I think I'd like to have a challenge.
Your question has a contradiction in it because you said how long, but there is no
I
time.
know.
So how
I
can
know.
we measure that? It might be 2 billion
It's
years.
true.
It might be 1 second. We have no idea because there is no time.
I know. You ask the best questions, Sergey. You seriously do. But let's pretend that there's a little bit of time so we could just
Okay.
work with the concept. But given a few billion years, would you like to do something that might be different, like a challenge? And you might. And I guarantee that you did, because that's why you're playing the game right now. So anyhow, when I work with clients, and when I ask them that, this is what they all say. They go, not long. Not long. I mean, just the idea that there would be too much perfection. Like, so, so you choose to come here and you choose to play in the simulation. And the reason this is the most challenging game in the universe is because you don't know you're playing a game. And so anybody here, we are like the cosmic renegades who are here going, I'll play it. I'll get in there. Let me do it. I'm going to get it. Now, let me step back one more time here. So in the same way that when you play games, wherever you leave off, I know this won't make a lot of sense if you've never played a game, but I'll just throw it out there. So this is how it works. So you play a game and you get to, let's say you get to level 3. And then how do you exit the game? You die. Everybody dies, and then they come back and they start over, but they don't go back to the beginning. They will, if they die on level 3, they come back in at level 3, not 2, not 4, they come in at 3. So if you can think of it this way, that we have these past game lifetimes, and I just throw in the game word so you think of it in a game-like way, all right? So let's say you leave off on level 3. Well, then when you're programming what you're going to do in your game when you come here, you're going to have to program it in that you start at level 3. And that's why you will pick the family you pick. And you will pick your parents, you will pick everything, and the environment you're going to be in. And all the limitations that you have are specific to what level you were on when you died out of the game the last time. And you also come with the same gifts, right? So when you look at people and you think, oh, well, that's wrong, that's bad, it shouldn't be that way. The thing is, you don't know the game that person is playing. Nobody does. You only know your game. And even then, most people have no idea that what's going on. But once you get the hang of it, it makes so much sense when you start to understand this. So what I started doing is I work with clients like on emotional things and help them understand basically how to play the game. And so I started using these concepts that I had written into the story. And it was so interesting. And this is why if I wasn't 100% convinced this was real before, I am now. And this was about 3 years ago. I started just playing around. So, if you look at people who are scientists and, you know, very, very, very left brain, well, I'm the opposite on the right brain side, like way out there. So I don't have any, I never learned the way you're supposed to learn. I didn't get any degrees. I'm so pleased about that because it never got me to think inside the box. I was always thinking outside the box, and I was always just letting things come to me. So I'm working with a client, and let me just say that when you look at your waking world, there is no difference in how it functions. So if you can understand that in your sleeping world, your feelings matter. In other words, what you're feeling matters in terms of what you're going to create. So I want to give you a quick example of this. They worked with children who were having nightmares, and so the doctor started teaching these kids to turn the monster into a piece of cheese. And so it takes a while, but eventually what you believe in your conscious world shows up in your subconscious dream state. And so once a child could remember in the dream state that they could turn the monster into a piece of cheese, they never had nightmares after that again. Okay. Now there's another interesting thing. They did a study on people who were dreaming, and let's say you were paralyzed and you were in a wheelchair. If you woke up for a split second and realized that you were not paralyzed, and if you've ever had that kind of a dream where you go, oh, thank God, and then you go back to sleep, you'd still be in the same wheelchair, but you wouldn't be paralyzed anymore. Okay? So I started working with these concepts. And so if a person came to me and they tell me what their problem was, very briefly, I give them like 1 minute. And then I go, okay, how did you feel about that? Because I'm like, I'm your therapist. I would literally say, okay, so you dreamed that. I'm your therapist. How did you feel about that? So they tell me their feelings. And then I would go and I'd say, now you have to be 100% in your imagination. So we go back, and instead of taking them back to what happened and mulling around there, I go, just take the feeling. Now imagine the first time you had that feeling. And then they say, oh, it was this event. Almost always there's some event, or, sometimes there'd be a past life, but we're just going this lifetime for now. So I have this event. And what I would do is all of a sudden I got the idea to have them go back the night before it happened. And if you think about it, any trauma you've ever had in your life, the biggest drama of it was that you didn't know it was coming, right? So I had them go into their bedroom of their child and imagine being a child in bed, and they just wake up. And then I have them imagine themselves from now, but they can look any way they want. But they go back and they imagine materializing in the bedroom, and then the little child wakes up and it's their guardian angel. And anybody who can do that, anybody who can imagine themselves as a child and how that would have felt and the excitement they would have felt seeing their own guardian angel, they have no problem doing this technique. Anybody who's logical, left brain, I don't see why it matters, they can't do it. So I'll just put that out. So it only works for the right brain folks who are willing to be there. But here's what happens. I then tell them so they give this child love, and they tell them, I love you more than anybody in the whole wide world. I'll always be here for you. And then they say, here's what's coming. And just give them a really quick, imagine a very, you're just doing it in your mind. So they're quickly showing them this trauma that's coming up. And then they say to the child, you've got a choice. You can either create a brand new timeline, or you can go down this timeline, but I'm going to be there with you. and I'm going to help you, and you're going to make new choices so that you can still learn the lesson, but you don't have to go through it in a traumatic way. And it's really interesting. I've had people do both ways and be, like sometimes they'll come back and do it a different way. But it's really interesting because 9 times out of 10, their child will immediately tell them, I want this. It's really interesting. And so they would decide what they want. And so if they decided sometimes they don't even want to be born into that family, they make up a whole new story. And they just start making it up. And I help them if I see something, oh, you could try this or that. And they just make it up, but they don't pull on the past. If they make up a brand new timeline, they don't pull on the past. And and the same thing goes if they go into what happened, but they decide to do it in a different way. So sometimes they might decide to, and again, I lead them if they need it, but sometimes they might decide to come in as this really loving, advanced child who is so loving and so amazing that the family changes because of them. And, it doesn't matter. But here's the thing. In a game, uh, let's say you've been going left for 30 years. And every time you play the game, you go left, left, left. And then one day you go, I'm going to go right. Okay? So everything to the left, every experience you had when you went left, instantly shuts down and becomes irrelevant. You don't think about it again because now you're going right and you're thinking to the right. Okay? So this is what happens with these people, and this is why I think it happens. When people come to the end of this imagination that I just told you about, they literally, if they're in their imagination, they literally can no longer pull up the traumatic feelings they had in the beginning. And it is trippy when it happens. And if it doesn't happen, I'll say, okay. They'll go, well, I feel better. I say, no. How about this? What percent were you in your imagination? And those people will always go, oh, about 50%. I'll take them back in until they get up to 100%. Then we go back again and they go, I can't feel it. And it doesn't come up again. So if this was real, if we are in, real, whatever, if this was truly a physical reality and all that we've been taught thus far was true, right? That it takes, days, months, years to go through all this stuff. How could it change instantly like that? And I've been doing this for 3 years and it happens over and over again. So that's what got me thinking differently. And that to me was what really proved to me, like I was pretty sure this was a virtual reality. But when that started happening consistently and I could do it over and over with people, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just, but if you look at it like God's game, like if this was love running the show, if this program, love programmed it, basically what we're doing is we're reprogramming the program. It's like being able to drill down while your character's playing, right? Drill down through the dirt down into the level of the program, change it, and then come back up and play the game. And that's why it has such a game-like quality from how I understand it, because there's no way to explain it otherwise. How could that just instantly go? And then it doesn't come back because you're on a new timeline. I wish you played games because then you'd know what I meant.
Yeah.
But that's the concept.
Okay. It's a little bit off topic, but you spoke about it, so I'm going to ask you a question. You said
Okay.
that all near-death experiencers, when they come back, they experienced love, only love, and they don't want to come back here. And basically, they all say the same. But
Well,
I,
not all of them. Not
yeah,
all
but
of them. I'm just, yeah.
I had a guest. Actually, I had an interview, the second interview with him yesterday, and he went to hell.
Yeah.
And
Those are the exceptions.
that story, I don't know if you've seen that on my channel. It's called "I Went to Hell." It's the name of the video,
Hmm. Yeah.
and there is no love right there. He ran away. He wanted to come back to Earth. He wanted to run away from that nightmare, He described it
Yeah.
in such a
Yeah.
vivid detail. You can make a movie. Probably they're going to make a movie out of that because all this media industry likes to instill fear in people. This is how
Sure.
they. So that's a good screenplay for a movie.
Right.
They don't like to make movies about people being happy. That doesn't make money.
Right, exactly. That was true. It's got to have conflict.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
Well, I can actually talk about this. I didn't bring that into what we were talking about. There are, of course, people that happens to. So, but in this story, the game, there is a part of the story where the character dies. I mean, but this isn't like at the beginning. This is like an experience in like a ritualistic kind of thing, and she wasn't actually physically harmed, but they stabbed a doll and she literally boom was gone and on the other side. So I did some studying in order to really, so I try to get as close as I can to what I think is the truth based on what I understand. So I discovered two very amazing books, and one was written, they're both written in the 1950s. One was written in Brazil in Portuguese, and the other was written in English in London, I think. And these two stories, they were different, but they brought in the same concepts. And and so when I looked at them, they totally supported each other. And the one person I can tell you a little bit about, the man from Brazil, was such a phenomenal psychic that he would literally sit at his house and people would line up outside his house, and then he would do automatic writing. So he wouldn't even know what he was writing. He would just, they'd say, I want to know about my uncle or my dad or whoever. And he would write it out, hand him the paper. Now, he never took a dime for that. In fact, he had millions of books, and like he wouldn't take money for stuff. Like there was just like, he was just so humble. He was such an amazing person. So this is what these two people agreed on, complete, like all of everything wove together when I put the two together. But here's what they said basically. And if you imagine, like here, whatever you're thinking and feeling, there is a time lag because we're playing a game that we don't know we're playing and we have to learn how to play it. So we have this lag before things happen. But when you go to the other side, it's instant. And wherever you are at, what your truth is, your inner truth, will show up for you in whatever your experience is on the other side, right? So you could be a drug dealer with a really good heart and you're going to show up around good-hearted people. And you could appear to be the best person in the world, and if you weren't, and now mind you, this isn't judgment. It on the other side, it's like attracts like. So one thing you'll never hear people talk about who go to the other side, they'll never go, well, I went to the other side, all these amazing people. And then there was this one person who was such a jerk. And they never say that because it's like attracts like. Okay. So imagine that this person has been getting away with murder or whatever all their life. Well, they're going to be in a like attracts like place. So, in other words, the murderers are going to get together and they're going to get to do all of that until it no longer appeals to them. And that is love, because love doesn't force us to do anything. Love allows you to go, I don't want to do this anymore. Think about that. And they say, these two authors agreed that people who are in the dark, they call it the dark realms. And they said people in the dark realms, it feels like an hour feels like 100 years in the dark realms. And it isn't all like deep and dark, right? Like they both had descriptions of people who would come in, and let's say that a person was just well, I'll tell you the people that show up in this kind of like, imagine you're going down a hill, right? And at the top of this hill, it's just kind of gray. There's no color, and if there's any plants, they're withered and dying. and you'd see these houses that just looked horrible and they're just barely standing there. And but they said that they would see people, like there was a this one man experienced someone who was royalty, and he was all dressed in his royal clothing, but it was threadbare. It was like 100 years old, and this person was completely alone and no one there. And so there are different versions of what people experience. But they, in some of the books I was reading, they said there's a lot of judges and lawyers and politicians and just people that, you may not, you think, oh, they're doing great. Or you think this is terrible. They've done this. Well, it doesn't matter, because whatever they've done, whoever they truly are within, they're going to end up in a world that perfectly mirrors them. And then, so that's why, and I know that, like, people who like Daniel Brinkley, he had been a sniper, and he had the same kind of experience that your friend talked about, like, oh my God, what am I doing here? People who commit suicide, sometimes that can happen, but sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. I can't really speak to that. But I can say that it will be a match that every person has the opportunity to change their mind about where they're at, right? And if you think about it, and this is one of the things that makes all the difference in the world. If you simply say to yourself, do you want to be right or happy? Because everybody in the dark realms is dedicated to being right. If they're there and they don't, and they're not, because both of these authors agreed that the minute you no longer choose to be violent in your thoughts and your actions, and you choose to you want something else, that there are literally people that are healers, that they will instantly show up and take you out of there. And they both also agreed that they would try to take other people with them. Like, anybody else want to go? And they're like, no, this is terrible. You're too light. You're too bright. So these pieces to the puzzle made so much sense. And this is why what you do in this game, although it's not real and you're going to come out of it, it does matter what you do. And so on the other side of this, like, so if you're thinking, oh, well, how do I play this at the best level so that when I wake up on the other side, I've got the best outcome. And what's interesting, the people who have the best, highest frequency. So it's all frequency. So the highest frequency people means that you live in the highest frequency home, and everything is like, I mean, like, colors are sound and sounds have color, and it's just amazing. Okay. So the people who live in the highest frequencies are those who were the most generous in this lifetime. And think about that. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. You can be generous with your time, with your energy, if anything, or money, or whatever it may be. But in any case, that's the cheat code to this game, people. That's it. it's generosity. And so think about it. When you're generous, that energy flows right back to you while you're playing this game, but it's multiplied so much on the other side. Okay, I'm being quiet for a moment.
Let me go back to one of your earlier comments you made. You said that on the other side, the souls meet souls that they have the same vibration. This is why they
Mm-hmm.
love everybody. There is no one you're not going to see your neighbor that you hated,
Right,
because they're in
right.
a different realm. So that means that
Well,
you
they
might,
could be.
yeah. So that means you might not see your family or your parents if you had a bad childhood. They're just not going to be there.
Well, not necessarily, because you see, you don't know what's really going on, right? So, for instance, you may think, "Oh, I don't like this person at all," but they may have been your best friend, right? They may be your best friend on this side. And so think about it. When you're setting up the game that you're going to play, You have people who are, um, the people who are probably your worst enemies are your best friends on this side. Right? Because they go, I'll play that game. I'll play that part for you. I will be so convincing. You're going to love it. I'm going to play that part. Really, the people who are the most challenging are sometimes the people who you love the most. And isn't that a great contrast? Like, you don't know. You don't know till you get there. But I do believe that we play in groups, in pods, like dolphin pods of people, and we come back and we do all different things and go back and forth and that kind of thing. So
Okay, I think you already answered this question in your talk, but I'm going to ask you again because it's very important. How do we choose love over fear all the time?
well, actually, I this is part of what I teach, and it's very simple. This is something called the OK concept. And so you have something come up. And okay, let me actually step back for a second. So think about people who watch, inspiring shows, and they read books and they go to classes. And no matter how inspired you are, you will tend to go back to your old way of doing things because it's a dominant neural pathway in the brain that you're dealing with. So no matter how much you know in your left brain and you understand concepts, it doesn't matter because you're going to have this knee-jerk reaction within a few days that takes you back. So what I teach people to do is something called the OK concept. But there's also a video that I did. It's called The Golden Key by Emmett Fox. So I want to give your audience a way to actually do this. Now here's the trick. You have to teach yourself through repetition to do this over and over again. It's repetition that creates a new neural pathway in the brain. So anything that you do or you see anybody do that's how they always respond, that's a dominant neural pathway in the brain. So the trick is you have to start to develop a new neural pathway. And the simplest way to do this is whenever anything goes wrong, or what you're thinking about, if anything that you're thinking about is negative and you're starting to go off into this negative, you just stop and you go, it's okay. It's just what's happening. You see, it's just that people make something that's happening right or wrong. And let's say you're making it wrong, or you're afraid of what's happening, or you're going into the past or the future, then you're going to get more of that thing that you're feeling because you're feeling it into reality. Okay? And so think about this. So whatever's happening, you go, it's okay. This is okay. And that is going to stop you from going into judgment around it, going into, well, this is wrong. And how did they, and da, 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 and whatever it is. So once you get in that habit and you let it be okay just the way it is, it's amazing what happens because this game is so beautifully set up that if you pull your energy out of it, it'll take care of itself. How many times have you said, well, I can't do anything about it, it must be okay, and then whatever it is, it just takes care of itself, and it will. And so the more that you do this, like I have never, since I started doing this, I'd get a flat tire or something. I couldn't even get to my trunk before someone would pull over to help me. But if you're in this negative state where you're just upset, look at anybody who gets, they're upset about stuff and they get dramatic about, or whatever, maybe not dramatic, they just are angry or whatever. They have more things to be angry about. It isn't like, okay, I'm angry about this, now I'm over it and that's it, and I never get angry again. They keep getting angry. And so it's the same concept, if that makes sense, that when you let it be okay, you are neutralizing your feelings. And that is much closer to love than when people are going, well, this is terrible and blah, 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 blah. So that is a loving choice. It's neutrality. In fact, on that scale, there's like a scale between love and fear. I forget what it's called, but anyhow, if you look for a chart and you go from love to fear and the energy of it, 200 is the turning point between fear and love. And 200 is courage. And you know what? It takes courage to say it's okay. It takes courage to say, I would rather be happy than right. Because people are so determined to be right, which is a fear based place of being. So they get more of what they're doing. So this isn't new stuff that I'm telling you, but when you think about it in a more game like way, and you realize that when you wake up, and this is the whole trick to this, your waking world functions the same way. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what a person said to you. Everything that matters is how do you feel about it. That's how you change the game. And you shift your feelings by going, oh, and this is a great way to shift that. The Course in Miracles says God knows you don't know how to forgive. Be willing to forgive, and God will take care of the rest. So if you do something as simple as go, I am willing. And it could be forgive. I'm willing to let it go. I'm willing to be happy instead of right. You bring in, I am willing, and that willingness is immediately supported by love.
Let's talk about your book. How can people find more about you, about your book, about what you do, if you can tell us?
Sure. It's called, my site is called the Results Program. And in the menu, you can find the game audiobook. And there are also testimonials about this healing work I was telling you about. It's called Emotional Transformation Code, ETC. So if you look for ETC testimonials, you'll get to watch people who've actually had the experience I was talking about earlier.